The morning sun crept over the horizon, slicing through the mist that hung over Ridgefield Valley, a quiet, rural town that hadn't seen change in decades. But today, the ground didn't feel still. It hummed, low and uneasy, like it was holding its breath. Ethan Cole stood beside his heavy excavator, wiping the dust from his hands. He'd come here to rebuild his life, and to finish the project that would finally silence his past. The land was old, scarred, but it had potential. He'd bought the entire stretch fair and square, planning to turn it into something worth remembering. Then came the voice. "Hey, you can't dig there!" Karen Fielding, the self-proclaimed Queen of Ridgefield's Heritage Preservation Committee, marched across the field with her clipboard like it was a weapon. She wasn't tall, but she carried herself like a general, chin high, eyes locked, a smirk that could cut through concrete. Ethan barely looked up. "It's my land." "Was," she snapped, "until you started tearing it apart. That soil is part of this town's history. You're about to destroy something sacred." He laughed under his breath. "It's dirt, Karen. I'm building homes, jobs, a future." But she wasn't hearing it. Karen always needed to win. And when people didn't fall in line, she made them pay. By noon, she'd called the county inspector. By dusk, she had a small crowd of angry locals holding "Save Our Land" signs at his gate. They didn't know the truth, that Ethan's land wasn't just another empty lot. Underneath it lay something buried decades ago. Something Karen was desperate to keep hidden. That night, Ethan sat in his trailer, staring at the documents spread across his desk. The deeds, the surveys, the town's records. Every line led to one conclusion. Karen was lying. The land wasn't protected. It was rigged. The paperwork doctored, the history rewritten. Then the tremor came again. The same deep, unsettling rumble that made the window glass shiver in its frame. The ground outside quivered, faint but real, like the earth itself was warning him to stop digging. Ethan stood, staring out into the moonlit construction site. Somewhere out there, the wind carried Karen's voice. "You'll regret crossing me." He didn't know yet, but the ground would make sure she did. The next morning, Ridgefield woke up to chaos. Ethan's excavator stood silent, half buried in a pit that hadn't existed the night before. The soil had split open like a wound, fresh, jagged and deep enough to swallow a truck tire. The locals gathered at the fence line, whispering. Some said it was a sinkhole. Others said it was karma. But Karen Fielding, standing in her pristine white coat and sunglasses, called it proof. "I told you this land wasn't safe," she announced, waving her clipboard for the news crew she'd dragged out here. "This man's greed caused the earth to collapse." Ethan clenched his jaw. He'd seen the tremor. He knew it wasn't from his machines. Something had been shifting long before he started digging. Still, the cameras didn't care about truth. They cared about Karen's show. By noon, the county inspector showed up again. "Same guy, same routine." "Mr. Cole," he sighed, "we're gonna have to halt operations until a geotechnical survey clears the site. Safety reasons." Ethan nodded tightly. But inside, his mind was racing. Every delay cost him money. Every inspection pushed him closer to bankruptcy. And Karen knew it. That night, as rain began to fall, Ethan walked the perimeter of the site with a flashlight. The mud sucked at his boots, and the storm made the hills whisper. He crouched beside the cracked pit and noticed something strange. The fracture wasn't random. It followed a perfect line. A man made one. He grabbed his shovel and started digging along the split, following it in the dark. Just a few feet down, his blade hit metal. A thick, rusted pipe that didn't belong on any blueprint he'd seen. It wasn't part of the town's infrastructure. Someone had buried it deliberately. Lightning flashed, illuminating the far side of the fence. Karen stood there, holding an umbrella, watching him like a hawk. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. That small, knowing smile on her face said everything. Ethan dropped the shovel. "You planted something here, didn't you?" he shouted over the thunder. Karen's smile widened. "You really should have stayed out of Ridgefield, Mr. Cole." Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the storm. Behind Ethan, the ground gave a slow, hollow groan, deep and alive. The flashlight flickered. The crack widened an inch, then another. The mud shifted under his boots, as if the land itself was waking up. And for the first time, Ethan realized the ground wasn't just unstable. It was angry. By dawn, Ethan's construction site looked like a battlefield. Mudslides had carved trenches down the slopes. The excavator sat half-tipped in the sinkhole, and the crew refused to come back until the curse was gone. Rumors spread fast in Ridgefield. Whispers about old burial grounds, ancient tunnels, and ghost stories no one had cared about until now. But Karen was fueling them. Her voice was everywhere, local radio, Facebook groups, even the church bulletin. "The land remembers," she said on one broadcast, "and it's rejecting what doesn't belong." Ethan wasn't superstitious. but something wasn't adding up. So he drove into town, straight to the county archives, a dusty little office tucked behind the courthouse. The clerk, an older man named Wyatt, looked up from his coffee as Ethan stepped in, soaked from the rain. "Back again, huh? Thought that land of yours was settled." "It's not," Ethan replied. "I need everything on parcel 42B. Old surveys, deeds, all of it." Wyatt frowned but fetched the files anyway. The folders were yellowed, edges curled from years of neglect. As Ethan flipped through them, his stomach sank. There were missing pages, key maps torn out, signatures erased. But one document survived the damage. A transfer record dated 1987. The owner's name before Ethan's purchase? Karen Fielding. He froze. She hadn't just been fighting to protect the land. She'd owned it, and she'd sold it under an alias. That meant whatever was buried there, she knew about it long before he arrived. He photocopied the file, slipped it into his jacket, and drove back to the site. The rain had stopped, leaving the valley eerily quiet. He walked to the pit again, flashlight trembling slightly in his hand. The rusted pipe was still there, glistening with moisture. He knelt beside it and scraped away more dirt. Beneath the pipe, another layer of metal appeared. This one smoother, deliberate, like a sealed hatch. A few faded letters were etched into the surface. RFD Substation 9. He frowned. Ridgefield didn't have a Substation 9. The town barely had one power plant. So what was this? A gust of cold wind swept across the field. Ethan looked up. A black SUV sat on the ridge, headlights off, engine idling. Someone was watching. He turned off his flashlight, crouching low. Through the rain-streaked window, he caught a glimpse of Karen in the passenger seat, speaking to someone he didn't recognize. A man in a dark coat. And just before the SUV drove away, she turned her head toward him and smiled. When morning broke, Ridgefield Valley felt colder than usual, not just from the mist, but from the silence that settled after a night of secrets. Ethan hadn't slept. His mind kept replaying that moment. Karen's smile, the SUV, and the man beside her. By 8 a.m., he was back at the site. His crew had officially walked off the job, citing safety concerns. Only the hum of the wind and the creak of half-buried machinery remained. Then he heard tires crunching on gravel. A black truck pulled up. Not Karen's SUV this time, but a newer one. The driver stepped out, tall, sharp features, wearing that same dark coat he'd seen from the ridge. "Ethan Cole?" the man said, flashing a badge too quickly for Ethan to read. "Name's Agent Rourke, Environmental Protection Bureau. We need to talk." Ethan crossed his arms. "Funny. Karen said something about the EPA too, but I checked. There's no ongoing investigation." Rourke smiled slightly. "That's because ours isn't public. You've stumbled onto something that predates the town itself." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Substation 9? Rourke's gaze flicked up sharply. "Where did you hear that name?" "On my land. There's a sealed hatch buried under the soil. Looks government-made." Rourke didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a thin folder. Inside were black and white photographs, aerial images of Ridgefield Valley from decades ago. The patch of land Ethan now owned was circled in red ink. "That area used to house a testing facility," Rourke said. "Cold War era, officially decommissioned in 1974. But if that hatch is still sealed, it means they never cleaned up what's underneath." "What's underneath?" Rourke met his eyes. "Let's just say, something that shouldn't ever see daylight." Before Ethan could reply, a car engine echoed down the road. Karen's silver sedan rolled up, stopping beside them. She stepped out like she owned the valley, her heels clicking against the gravel. "Agent Rourke," she said, pretending surprise. "I thought we agreed you'd handle this quietly." Ethan froze. "You know him?" Karen smiled, brushing dust off her sleeve. "Oh, Ethan, you really think I'd let you dig into classified soil without supervision?" Rourke stepped between them. "Karen, that's enough." But it was too late. From behind the ridge, 2 more vehicles appeared. Men in construction vests, carrying demolition tools. Ethan's gut twisted. Whatever was buried under his land, they were here to make sure no one ever found it. And for the first time, the wind carried not just tension, but the faint smell of gasoline. The moment Ethan caught that sharp chemical scent in the air, his instincts screamed at him, "Run!" Karen stood still, arms crossed, pretending to supervise as the men in vests unloaded metal drums from their trucks. The side labels were faded, but Ethan recognized the symbol, flammable liquid. "Karen," he called out, stepping forward. "What the hell are you doing?" She turned with that infuriating calmness, the kind that came from knowing you had control. "Cleaning up a mess," she said. "You should thank me. You were about to dig into something you couldn't handle." Rourke said nothing. He just kept glancing between them, eyes tight with unease. Ethan took a few steps closer. "You can't burn a government site. That's not cleanup. That's evidence destruction. Karen's eyes hardened. Evidence of what exactly? Toxic waste? Secret tests? Maybe something worse? You don't want to know what's down there. Her tone cracked for a second. Just a flicker of fear. That told Ethan everything. She did know. One of the workers shouted, "Lines are ready, ma'am!" They'd run hoses from the barrels toward the pit, directly above the hatch. Rourke grabbed her arm. "Karen, you can't do this without clearance." She yanked free. "You think I care about clearance? If that chamber ruptures, this valley becomes unlivable. I'm saving the town." Ethan didn't buy it. Her urgency wasn't about safety. It was about control. Whatever was buried under there had the power to destroy her reputation. He darted toward the pit. "You light that line and you'll burn us all!" Karen shouted. "Stop him!" Two men lunged. Ethan swung a shovel, catching one across the chest and sending him sprawling into the mud. The second grabbed his arm, but Ethan twisted, slamming his shoulder into the man's jaw. He broke free and sprinted for the valve attached to the gasoline line. Lightning flashed overhead, followed by a crack of thunder that shook the valley. Rain began to pour, soaking the dirt, turning the fire line into a muddy snake winding toward the hatch. Karen screamed, "Light it now!" One of the men flicked a flare. Ethan dove. The flare hit the mud, fizzed, and went out in the downpour, inches from the open line. Steam rose. The workers backed off, cursing. Karen's perfect control was gone. She was trembling with fury. Ethan stood, mud-smeared, breathing hard. "You just tried to blow up my land. Next time, I won't be so forgiving." Rourke stepped forward, voice low. "She won't stop, Cole. Whatever's down there, it's about to wake up." Another tremor rippled beneath their feet. Stronger this time. The ground wasn't warning them anymore. It was responding. The tremor didn't stop this time. It deepened, a long, shuddering groan that seemed to come from miles below the surface. The excavator rattled, the trucks bounced on their axles, and Karen stumbled backward, clutching her clipboard like it was a shield. Ethan crouched, one hand pressed to the trembling earth. "That's not a sinkhole," he muttered. "It's something moving." Rourke's face had drained of color. "Everyone back away from the pit, now!" Karen snapped. "Don't you give orders on my property." But she didn't finish. The ground beside her cracked open. A seam tore through the mud like lightning, splitting wide enough to swallow a fence post. From within the darkness came a sound, not mechanical, not natural, a slow metallic moan, like steel bending under pressure. Ethan grabbed Rourke's arm. "You said this was a test site. What did they bury here?" Rourke hesitated. "Project RFD-9, an underground energy core. Experimental seismic stabilizer. They said it could neutralize earthquakes, but the prototype failed. They sealed it instead of dismantling it." Ethan's eyes widened. "You mean it's still running? Or dying," Rourke said grimly. "And if it ruptures, that tremor won't stop. It'll tear half the valley apart." Karen backed away, mud splattering her shoes. "You're lying. You're trying to scare me." Ethan glared at her. "Then come look yourself." She hesitated, torn between pride and fear, then stepped forward. Together they peered into the widening fissure. Deep below, faint blue light pulsed rhythmically, like the slow beat of a mechanical heart. A gust of heat rolled up from the pit. The rain hissed as it hit the surface, steam curling into the air. Rourke grabbed his radio. "HQ, this is Agent Rourke, Ridgefield site. We have an active substation breach. Repeat, Substation 9 is active." Static, no reply. Karen turned to him, eyes wild. "Shut it down! You work for the government. Do something!" "I can't," Rourke snapped. "The controls are underground, and that hatch you tried to burn is the only way down." Ethan looked at the hatch again, now half exposed, humming faintly. "Then I'll open it." Karen grabbed his arm. "You'll kill us all!" He pulled free. "You already tried that." With one motion, Ethan grabbed the excavator's ignition key, climbed into the cabin, and lowered the bucket toward the hatch. Metal shrieked. Sparks flew. The ground shook harder. The hatch gave way, a blast of blinding blue light flooding the valley. Karen screamed. Rourke shielded his face. Ethan stared down into the abyss. What he saw wasn't machinery. It was movement. Something was alive under Ridgefield. The light was so bright it cut through the rain, painting the valley in electric blue. Ethan stumbled back from the hatch, shielding his face as a column of steam shot upward. The air smelled of ozone and burnt metal. Karen screamed over the roar. "Close it! For God's sake, close it!" But it was too late. The hatch shuddered once, then split open like a cracked egg. From the depths came a deep, rhythmic vibration, a pulse that rolled through the ground, through their chests, through the air itself. The excavator rattled violently. The trucks began to slide toward the pit. Rourke shouted, "It's destabilizing! The core's waking up!" Ethan's voice cut through the noise. "You said it was an energy stabilizer. What's it doing to the ground?" "It's overloading," Rourke shouted back. Those old reactors use seismic resonance to regulate underground pressure. But if it's been active for 50 years, it's feeding off the Earth's own movement now. Karen's eyes darted between them. So you're telling me the ground, the valley itself, has become part of it? Before Rourke could answer, a tremor ripped through the site so violently it knocked them all off their feet. Cracks spiderwebbed across the surface, and the pit widened another 3 feet. Ethan scrambled up, mud streaking his face. He looked down and froze. Below the glowing blue core, something else was taking shape. A vast structure, metallic but organic, its curved surfaces rising and shifting like it was breathing. The machine wasn't built into the ground. It had grown there. Rourke swore under his breath. It's alive. Karen stumbled backward, shaking her head. No, that's impossible. It's some kind of trick. But the truth was written across the valley floor. The ground was pulsing, each tremor syncing with that strange blue rhythm. The earth wasn't breaking. It was responding. Ethan's mind raced. If that thing's feeding on movement, then all this shaking is making it stronger, Rourke finished grimly. They both turned to Karen. She looked frozen, pale as the mist around her. Then slowly her expression hardened again. If it's alive, then we bury it. Burn it, whatever it takes. Ethan stepped toward her. You can't fight the ground, Karen. She met his gaze defiant. Watch me. Karen turned and shouted to her men. Get the barrels, now! Rourke lunged forward. Stop her! But another shockwave rolled through the valley, stronger than before, throwing everyone to the ground as the hatch erupted in a blast of molten light. The earth was no longer trembling. It was awakening. The light poured from the pit in waves, blinding, pulsating, alive. Each flash illuminated the valley like lightning, revealing faces twisted in fear. The barrels Karen ordered dragged forward, tipped in the chaos, spilling gasoline into the muddy cracks that ran straight toward the open core. Ethan pushed himself up from the soaked ground. His ears rang, his heart pounded, and the air vibrated as if every molecule wanted to break apart. He shouted over the roar, Karen, stop! You'll ignite the whole valley! She stood her ground near the edge, hair whipping in the storm, her expression wild. Better ashes than whatever that thing is. Rourke grabbed her wrist. You don't understand! This wasn't just an experiment. The stabilizer was made to merge with the ground, to turn seismic energy into containment. If it's alive, destroying it could release what it's holding back. Karen froze, eyes darting toward him. Holding back what? Rourke didn't answer. He didn't need to. Another deep groan rippled through the valley. Lower, deeper, almost sentient. The mud shifted under their feet like something breathing just below the surface. Ethan's flashlight beam caught movement down in the pit. Long, metallic veins spreading outward, threading through the dirt like roots. The more the earth shook, the farther they grew. He whispered, It's spreading. Karen backed away, her bravado cracking. You're lying. That's not possible. Rourke stepped closer to Ethan. We need to seal that hatch now. If the structure breaches the surface, it'll anchor itself. The entire valley will collapse into it. How? Ethan demanded. You said the control systems are underground. Rourke hesitated, then pulled a small black device from his coat, a detonator. Scarred and old, this was designed for a controlled demolition. It might still trigger the failsafe, if it's intact. Karen's voice trembled. You can't set off explosives over a reactor. Rourke met her gaze. You already tried fire. The next tremor hit hard, knocking Karen to her knees. The ground around the hatch began to bulge outward, chunks of soil crumbling as the metallic veins pulsed faster. Ethan snatched the detonator. Tell me what to do. Rourke's voice was grim. Plant the charge on the hatch. Get back at least 200 feet, and pray the system still listens. Karen staggered up. No! You'll bury us all! Ethan didn't hesitate. He ran toward the pit, boots sinking into the mud. The hatch glowed hotter now, blue fire licking its edges. He dropped to one knee and slammed the charge in place. The detonator blinked red, armed. Behind him, the wind died. For one eerie moment, everything went still. Then a voice, deep, resonant, mechanical, echoed from the open pit. Containment breached. Sequence resuming. Ethan turned just as the ground breathed in. The air seemed to collapse inward, as if the whole valley was taking one enormous breath. Then came the exhale, a blast of heat and sound that knocked Ethan off his feet and sent Karen and Rourke diving for cover behind the excavator. The hatch exploded open. A geyser of blue fire roared into the sky, scorching the rain into steam. The ground split wider, glowing veins crawling up from the pit like lightning frozen in metal. The voice boomed again, shaking the valley. Containment failure. Core integrity compromised. Adaptive sequence initiated. Ethan crawled to his knees, blinking through the smoke. The detonator still blinked red in his hand, untouched. He hadn't pressed it. Something else had triggered the system. Rourke's shout came through the roar. It's rebooting itself! It's trying to stabilize, but the structure's too old. Karen's voice cracked. Then stop it! Rourke pointed at the pit. You can't stop a machine that thinks the Earth is its body. Ethan stared down into the glow. The metallic veins weren't just spreading. They were reshaping the land. Slopes were flattening. Rocks were sliding as if gravity itself was bending. And beneath all of it, the deep pulse of that core grew faster, a heartbeat pounding through soil and stone. He shouted, "What happens if it reaches full power?" Rourke's face was grim. It'll try to stabilize every seismic fault it can connect to. And this valley sits on a fault line that runs 300 miles. Karen's voice dropped to a whisper. You mean, it'll wake up everything. A deafening crack tore through the ground, cutting her off. The northern ridge split apart, sending trees tumbling like matchsticks. The air stank of electricity. Ethan grabbed Karen's arm and pulled her back as the earth under them began to ripple. Not shake, ripple, like waves across water. The machines around the site trembled, metal whining as if pulled by invisible hands. Then, in the heart of the pit, something began to rise. It wasn't human. It wasn't even mechanical in a way Ethan could understand. A mass of living metal and stone, shaped by pressure and time, unfolding like the earth itself was standing up after a long sleep. Karen screamed. What is that? Rourke didn't look away. The stabilizer didn't fail. It became what it was meant to control. Ethan's voice was hoarse. A living seismic reactor? The creature moved again, the ground rolling beneath its weight. And for the first time, the valley wasn't just trembling. It was breathing. Ethan stared into the glow, heart pounding. If that thing keeps feeding, it'll level the entire valley. Rourke grabbed his arm. Then we end it, before it learns it can move. The valley convulsed like a living thing. A pulse rolling through the dirt that nearly threw Ethan from his feet. Trees bent sideways. Trucks toppled. The excavator groaned as its metal frame twisted under pressure. The creature, or machine, or whatever it was, rose from the pit, a colossal fusion of rock and steel, its glowing veins running like molten rivers through its surface. Rourke steadied himself against a boulder, eyes wide. It's drawing energy from the fault line. Every tremor makes it stronger. Karen screamed over the roar, "Then make it stop shaking!" Ethan barked a laugh that sounded more like a growl. "You think I control the earth? You started this, Karen." She turned on him, eyes filled with equal parts terror and rage. "I was protecting this town. You're the one who woke it up." The ground jolted again. The creature shifted its head, or what looked like one, toward the sound of their shouting. A deep rumble echoed out of it, not a roar exactly, but something heavier, resonant, like the growl of tectonic plates grinding together. Ethan froze. "It's listening to us." Rourke raised his voice, uncertain but desperate. "If it's still following stabilizer programming, it's responding to vibration frequencies. Sound, motion, maybe even our voices." Karen shouted. "Then tell it to go back to sleep." Rourke shook his head. "You can't command something older than the technology that built it." The ground around the pit cracked wider, glowing veins spreading toward the edges of Ridgefield. Every time the creature shifted, the lights in town flickered, power lines humming like struck guitar strings. The connection was literal. The entire valley had become part of it. Ethan grabbed the detonator again. The red light blinked steady. "There's still a charge in there. If I can detonate it under the core." Rourke's eyes widened. "You'll trigger a collapse. The whole valley will cave in. Better a collapse than this thing walking out of here." Karen stepped in front of him, muddy and shaking. "You can't do this. You'll kill everyone in Ridgefield." Ethan stared at her, voice low. "If we don't stop it now, there won't be a Ridgefield." The creature's glowing eyes turned toward them, the ground vibrating harder. Metal screamed, the hillside cracking open behind them. Ethan looked at Rourke. "Tell me how to reach the core." Rourke's jaw clenched. "You go under. Through the old substation tunnel." He pointed toward the collapsed road at the north end of the site. "It's buried under there." Karen whispered. "You'll die down there." Ethan looked at the rising monster, glowing against the storm. "Maybe, but if I don't go, we all will." He turned toward the tunnel, disappearing into the rain. Behind him, the ground roared. Ethan sprinted across the trembling field, mud spraying from his boots as the ground rippled under him like a restless ocean. Lightning flashed, revealing the fractured hillside Rourke had pointed to. Half buried beneath debris and tree roots was a rusted steel hatch, its hinges warped from age and pressure. He dug his fingers into the edge, gritting his teeth, and pulled. The hatch groaned but wouldn't move. He grabbed a metal rod from the wreckage nearby, wedged it under the lip, and heaved with everything he had. The door finally gave way, releasing a foul breath of stale air and dust that smelled like oil and electricity. Rourke's voice came through the storm behind him. "Once you're in, follow the main shaft west. The core access chamber should still be sealed. Karen shouted, "You're sending him to his death!" Rourke didn't answer. Ethan took one last look back at the valley, at the monster rising higher, its veins glowing brighter, its shape shifting as the ground fed it power. "If this works," he said, mostly to himself, "it all ends here." Then he descended into the darkness. The ladder creaked under his weight. Water dripped from the ceiling in slow, echoing rhythms. As he dropped lower, the temperature rose, the air thick with static. The deeper he went, the louder the hum grew, a deep, mechanical drone that made his chest vibrate. When his boots finally hit solid ground, he flicked on his flashlight. The tunnel stretched ahead, walls lined with old cables and rusted pipes. Signs marked Substation 9, restricted access. Ethan moved fast, his footsteps splashing through puddles. The hum grew into a pulse, a steady rhythm that matched the tremors shaking the world above. He turned a corner and froze. The tunnel ahead wasn't empty. Blue veins, the same glowing material from the pit, had broken through the concrete, crawling along the walls like living roots. They pulsed in sync with the sound, almost breathing. Ethan whispered, "You're everywhere, aren't you?" He followed the tunnel to a massive door marked Core Chamber. It was dented, one hinge half melted. A warning light flickered weakly above it. "Hazard. Do not open when active." The ground shook again, dust raining from the ceiling. Ethan braced himself, then gripped the wheel handle. Metal screamed as he turned it. Steam hissed out. The door shifted open. The chamber beyond glowed like a star. The stabilizer core floated in the center, suspended in a web of cables and metal arms, glowing blue-hot. But beneath it, something else moved. A shape, human-sized, pressed against the transparent shell from inside. Ethan stumbled back, voice breaking. "What the hell?" The figure's eyes opened, blue as the core, and it whispered, through the glass, in a distorted voice that still sounded human. "Ethan, it's me." Ethan froze, breath caught in his throat. The voice wasn't mechanical. It wasn't alien. It was unmistakably human, familiar in a way that made his stomach twist. He stepped closer to the glowing chamber, blinking through the haze. The figure pressed a hand against the inner surface. The skin shimmered with the same metallic sheen as the veins crawling through the tunnel walls. "Who are you?" Ethan whispered. The figure tilted its head, voice crackling through the static hum. "You don't remember, do you?" Ethan frowned, shaking his head. "Remember what?" "Project RFD," the voice said softly. "You weren't supposed to come back." His heart pounded harder. "I bought this land 6 months ago. I don't know what you're talking about." The figure's glowing eyes flickered. "You were part of it, before they erased it all, before they buried me." A chill ran down Ethan's spine. "That's impossible." "Nothing's impossible down here." The lights overhead flickered violently, as another tremor rippled through the floor. The metallic roots along the walls pulsed faster, feeding power into the chamber. The figure turned its head toward the ceiling, as if sensing the chaos above. "It's waking," the voice said. "You can't stop it now." Ethan's fists tightened. "Then tell me what it is." The figure hesitated, then whispered. "It was designed to control seismic activity through harmonic synchronization. But when the experiment failed, it adapted. It used me as a stabilizing core." Ethan stared at them, disbelief and horror warring in his eyes. "You're saying you were the power source?" "I am the power source. And the moment you opened that hatch, you set me free." Rourke's voice suddenly crackled through Ethan's radio. "Cole, do you copy? The creature's moving toward town. Whatever you're doing, do it fast." Ethan grabbed the radio. "There's someone down here, inside the reactor." Static. Then Rourke's sharp reply. "That's not someone. That's what's left of the core." The figure looked up, pain flashing across its glowing face. "He's lying. They built me to stabilize the valley. Karen helped them. She called it saving Ridgefield. But it was a sacrifice." Ethan's heart hammered. "You mean she knew you were down here?" "She signed it off." The ground rumbled violently, a deep groan shaking the chamber. The cables holding the core began to snap one by one. Sparks rained from the ceiling. "Ethan," the voice whispered. "It's breaking apart. You have to choose." "Choose what?" "Save the valley. Or save me." Ethan's flashlight flickered. The ground heaved beneath him. The reactor screamed with energy, blue light splitting the dark. And for the first time, Ethan saw the truth. The figure's face. Half metal, half human. Someone he did remember. The face behind the glass was older, changed, but Ethan's mind filled in what time and metal had stolen. The sharp jawline, the scar under the eye, the voice that once shouted through the hum of drilling rigs years ago. "Jack," Ethan whispered. "You're supposed to be dead." Jack Cole, his brother. The man who vanished 10 years ago during the Ridgefield seismic survey. The reason Ethan left construction. The reason he'd sworn never to come back. Jack smiled faintly, though the motion rippled through metal like liquid mercury. I was. Until Karen found the project and brought it back. Ethan stumbled closer, voice trembling. What did she do to you? She didn't do this. They did, Jack said. The company. The government. They built Substation 9 under Ridgefield to test controlled quakes. I volunteered, until it went wrong. The stabilizer fused with me. They sealed the chamber to stop the reaction. Ethan's stomach turned. They buried you alive. I became the failsafe. Every tremor, every quake, I absorbed it. I held this valley together. Jack looked upward, his expression dimming. Until you dug me out. Ethan's voice cracked. Then tell me how to stop it! I can't let this valley die. Jack pressed his glowing hand against the glass. You can't stop it without destroying the core. That means destroying me. Rourke's voice burst through the radio again. Cole! The creature's moving. It's heading for the highway. You've got minutes before it reaches the town perimeter. Ethan clutched the detonator, staring at the blinking light. His thumb hovered over the switch. There's no other way? Jack shook his head slowly. If you blow the stabilizer, the resonance will collapse the valley. But if you let it keep feeding, it'll spread. It won't stop here. The chamber walls shuddered again. Cables snapping one after another. Sparks rained across the room, casting ghostly flashes across Jack's half-human face. I tried to keep it dormant, Jack said quietly. Karen reopened the energy channels. She thought she could use it to control the land, to reshape Ridgefield. Ethan's voice was thick with fury. She used you. Jack's expression softened. Don't hate her. She thought she was saving lives. She didn't know what they'd done to me. The hum turned into a roar. Cracks spread across the containment glass. Blue fire surged around the chamber. Jack looked up. You don't have much time, brother. Ethan's grip tightened around the detonator. His other hand pressed to the glass just above Jack's. The heat was unbearable. Jack's voice came through the static. If you do this, make it count. Jack. But before Ethan could finish, the containment shell exploded in a flash of blue light, and his brother's voice echoed through the tunnel one last time. Don't let it win. The explosion threw Ethan backward, slamming him into a concrete wall. His vision blurred, ears ringing from the blast. The tunnel filled with blue fire that danced like liquid lightning, crawling along the walls and searing through steel. He staggered to his feet, coughing through the smoke. The reactor chamber was gone, torn open like a wound. Where Jack had stood, there was now only a column of pulsing light stretching upward, feeding into the veins that ran through the valley. Ethan screamed over the roar, Jack! But there was no answer, only the hum of raw energy ripping reality apart. His radio crackled violently. Cole! What the hell just happened down there? It was Rourke, panic breaking through his usual calm. The core blew! Ethan shouted. It's going critical. Everything's feeding off it. Static then get out, now! But Ethan wasn't leaving, not yet. His brother's final words echoed in his head. Don't let it win. He stumbled toward the main console, half buried in rubble, its screens flickering with garbled data. Among the chaos, one command blinked in red. Collapse protocol. Manual authorization required. Ethan wiped the dust from the cracked display. The input field waited for a code. He remembered Rourke's earlier words. The cores linked to the primary seismic relay. Maybe the relay still held an override. He pulled out his phone, using the last sliver of power to connect to the relay panel he'd mapped days ago. A string of numbers appeared, coordinates and a passkey buried deep in the archive logs. As he entered them, the console flared alive. A voice, calm, synthetic, filled the air. Collapse protocol armed. Confirmed detonation of Ridgefield Substation 9. Ethan hesitated. He thought of Jack, of the town above, of the kids who rode bikes past the construction fence every morning, of the homes resting on the fragile valley floor. If he hit confirm, the valley would collapse, but the core would die with it. He closed his eyes. I'm sorry, Jack. The ground cracked beneath him. Dust poured from the ceiling. Through the fissures, he saw the pulsing veins twisting like living tendrils, reaching for him. He slammed his hand onto the console. Confirm! A deep mechanical tone echoed through the tunnel. Red lights flashed. Collapse protocol engaged. Above ground, the earth began to shake violently. Buildings, trees, and roads shuddering as if the valley itself was screaming. Ethan turned toward the ladder. But before he could climb, a voice whispered through the hum. Jack's voice. You shouldn't have come back, brother. Then the entire tunnel erupted in light. The blast wave hurled Ethan up the shaft like a rag doll. He hit metal, concrete, then daylight, crashing into the mud outside as the earth split open beneath him. The valley roared, a deafening, unearthly sound that felt alive, like the planet itself was howling. He rolled onto his back, gasping. The sky had turned a sickly shade of violet. Lightning stitched through black clouds, and blue veins pulsed through the ground like arteries of fire. The stabilizer's power was tearing free. uncontrolled. Rourke sprinted toward him from a truck parked on higher ground. "Cole, what the hell did you do?" Ethan pushed himself up, shouting over the thunder. "Collapse protocol. It's supposed to seal it." Rourke pointed toward the valley. "Looks like it's fighting back." The hillsides crumbled as the ground convulsed. Entire trees were uprooted. The air smelled like ozone and burning metal. From the center of the valley, a column of light speared the clouds, and something vast began to rise within it. It wasn't the creature anymore. It was everything. The ground itself twisting, reshaping, coiling upward like it was trying to become something human, something aware. The stabilizer's energy had merged with the land, a storm with a pulse. Karen stumbled out of the SUV behind Rourke, her face pale, eyes wide. "You activated the failsafe?" "You idiot. It's not meant to stop the core, it's meant to erase it." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Then tell me how to shut it down." "There is no shutdown!" she screamed. "It'll keep collapsing until there's nothing left to power it. That means the whole valley," Rourke finished grimly. Karen grabbed Ethan's arm. "You have to cut the signal. The seismic feed is transmitting through the old relay towers. If you destroy those, you might sever the core's energy loop." He looked toward the distant ridge, where a cluster of red lights blinked through the storm. The towers. Lightning struck one, sending shards of molten steel into the air. The others still pulsed. Rourke tossed Ethan a detonator pack from the truck bed. "You've got 5 minutes before the collapse wave hits the town." Ethan nodded, his face set. "Then I'll make them count." Karen grabbed his sleeve, voice trembling. "Ethan, Jack's consciousness is still linked to the core. If you shut it down completely..." "He's already gone," Ethan said, though his voice wavered. She looked at him, and for the first time, there was no defiance, no power in her tone. Only guilt. "He tried to protect us. We turned him into a weapon." Ethan strapped the detonator to his chest and glanced back at the valley one last time. The light grew brighter, the ground vibrating like a heartbeat. He met Karen's eyes. "Then I'll finish what he started." And with that, he sprinted toward the ridge, into the heart of the storm. The explosion from the first tower lit up the ridge like daylight, the shockwave nearly knocking Ethan off his feet. Shards of molten steel rained down around him, sizzling in the mud. The entire valley pulsed in response, like the stabilizer itself had felt the wound. He didn't stop running. The second tower was seconds from detonation. He could hear the timer beeping faintly beneath the thunder. A countdown to salvation or oblivion. Behind him, Rourke shouted into the radio, "Cole! You're triggering seismic feedback. The readings are going haywire." Ethan gasped, fighting through the wind. "I don't care! This ends tonight!" Karen's voice broke through next, trembling with both fear and guilt. "Ethan, stop!" "Jack's consciousness. It's fully merged. If you blow the towers now, you'll erase him." He ignored her. Every step closer to the final tower felt heavier, the ground trembling harder. Lightning forked across the sky, striking the tower's antenna and splitting it in half. Sparks cascaded down the frame, turning the air metallic. At the base, Ethan planted the final charge. His soaked hands trembled as he attached the detonator wire. Then his radio hissed. "Ethan." He froze. The voice wasn't distorted this time. It was clear, human. "Jack? Don't do it." Ethan's throat burned. "You told me to finish it. You said not to let it win." "I did, but it's not what you think. The stabilizer isn't attacking. It's collapsing into itself. It's trying to contain the energy before it spreads." Ethan's mind spun. "Contain it? You mean you can still stop it?" "Maybe, but I need all 3 towers online to channel the energy back underground." He looked at the detonator in his hand, blinking red, ready to erase everything. "If I abort, it'll destroy the relay and you'll..." "I know," Jack said quietly, "but maybe this time I get to choose how it ends." The storm around him seemed to freeze, lightning hanging in the sky like suspended threads. Ethan could barely breathe. His brother, the same man he thought he'd lost a decade ago, was asking him to let him die again, this time willingly. Karen's voice came through the radio again, frantic. "Ethan, please. Don't trigger it." "He's stabilizing the field. Look at the valley." Ethan turned. She was right. The blue veins across the ground had stopped spreading. The light was dimming, shrinking toward the core like a tide pulling back. He looked at the detonator. His thumb hovered over the switch. "Trust me, Ethan," Jack whispered. "Just let go." Ethan exhaled shakily. "Goodbye, brother." He dropped the detonator into the mud. The beeping stopped. The storm's roar deepened into a single, sustained tone, and the valley glowed one last time before everything went still. For a moment, there was peace. Then the radio crackled. "Ethan, run." The word hit Ethan like a punch. Run. He didn't hesitate. He turned from the final tower and sprinted downhill, boots slipping on wet earth as the ground began to split apart. Behind him, a low, guttural rumble rolled through the valley. deep enough to rattle his bones. The ridge exploded upward, dirt and rock flying like shrapnel. A shockwave of blue light tore through the clouds. The stabilizer wasn't just collapsing, it was consuming itself. Rourke's voice screamed through the radio, barely audible through the chaos. "Cole, the feedback's off the charts! You've got a full implosion incoming. Get clear now." Ethan's lungs burned. The valley was folding inward like paper, chunks of land vanishing into a glowing void. Trees, fences, the remains of the construction site, all being pulled into the core. The sound was otherworldly, like 100 storms roaring inside a single heartbeat. Karen was waving from the truck on higher ground, shouting his name, but her voice was drowned by the thunder. Ethan stumbled as the earth tilted beneath him, his body slamming into the mud. He clawed forward, feeling the suction pulling him backward toward the collapsing valley. He grabbed a steel cable buried in the dirt and held on with everything he had. The wind screamed around him, filled with static, and for a moment, he could hear his brother again. "You shouldn't have come back, Ethan." "Then stop me," he gasped. "I'm trying." The light in the valley flared blinding white. For an instant he saw it, the shape of something massive rising from the crater. Human in outline, forged from dirt and lightning. It was Jack, or what was left of him, holding the valley together with sheer will. The form's eyes opened, glowing blue. Ethan whispered, "Jack!" The figure raised a hand, and the tremors stopped. The suction eased. The light pulsed one final time, then folded inward like a collapsing star. The sound vanished. The rain stilled. The valley was gone. Ethan collapsed to his knees, gasping, the world eerily silent around him. Where Ridgefield Valley once stood was now a vast crater, perfectly circular, edges glowing faintly as if cooling from unimaginable heat. Rourke's truck screeched to a halt nearby. He jumped out, eyes wide. "You alive?" "Barely," Ethan muttered, staring at the pit. Karen stepped out next, tears streaming down her face. "He did it," she whispered. Jack contained it. Ethan didn't answer. His radio buzzed softly beside him. Faint static, then a whisper. "Still here." "Brother!" Ethan looked toward the crater, eyes wide. "Jack?" But the voice faded, lost in the hum of the rain. And deep below, under layers of earth and silence, something pulsed once, then went dark. By morning, the storm was gone, replaced by an eerie calm that hung over Ridgefield like the air after a funeral. The valley had vanished. In its place stretched a vast, circular crater nearly half a mile wide, its glassy floor still faintly steaming. The sun glinted off it, cold and merciless. Ethan stood on the rim with Rourke and Karen, all three silent. Helicopters circled overhead. Government vans had rolled in before dawn, men in unmarked suits pacing the perimeter, speaking in clipped tones. "Containment teams calling it a localized collapse event," Rourke muttered. "That's one way to describe the end of a valley." Karen didn't answer. She stared down at the crater, her face pale and hollow. "He's still down there," she said softly. "I can feel it." Ethan's jaw tightened. "If he's down there, he's gone. The core's sealed." Karen shook her head. "You don't understand. The energy doesn't die, it transfers. The readings are still fluctuating. Whatever Jack did, it wasn't a full shutdown. He stabilized it. With himself." Ethan turned to her, anger flashing in his eyes. "You don't get to say his name. You're the reason he ended up like that." Her voice cracked. "You think I wanted that? The stabilizer was supposed to save the town. Stop the quakes, not consume people. We didn't know what it would do." Rourke stepped between them. "Arguing won't change it. We've got bigger problems." He pointed toward the crater floor. A shimmer ran across the surface, faint, like heat mirage, but rhythmic. "Seismic readings just spiked again," Rourke said. "Something's still moving under there." Ethan knelt, running his hand across the ground. The soil was warm, pulsing in a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. "Jack," he whispered. Then his radio, long dead, crackled. "Ethan." Ethan froze. Rourke and Karen exchanged a glance. The voice was faint, fragmented, buried under static. "I'm still holding it? Can't long..." Karen grabbed the receiver. "Jack, it's Karen! We're here!" No reply, only a low hum, deep and mechanical, echoing through the radio like something breathing underground. Ethan's pulse raced. "If he's alive, I'm going down there." Rourke caught his arm. "You step into that crater, you'll melt before you hit the floor. Radiation's off the charts. Then we find another way," Ethan said. His tone was sharp, desperate. "He's still fighting down there. I can't leave him again." Karen stared into the crater, eyes glassy. "If he's alive, he's not human anymore." Ethan didn't care. "He's my brother." The wind carried the faintest vibration, like something massive, shifting far below. The hum deepened, resonating through the ground under their feet. Rourke stepped back. "Whatever's left down there, It's waking up again. Ethan didn't flinch. His eyes stayed fixed on the crater. Then I'll go wake it myself. The descent began before dawn. The air was heavy with the smell of ash and ozone as Ethan strapped into the harness, lowering himself over the crater's edge. The rope hissed against the glassy surface, each step echoing into the hollow silence. Rourke's voice came through the earpiece, calm but strained. "Cole, readings are unstable down there. Radiation spikes every few meters. If anything starts glowing, you turn back. Got it?" Ethan's reply was simple, not leaving without him. Below, the crater pulsed faintly, slow, rhythmic, alive. Each glow seemed to respond to his presence, dimming and flaring like a heartbeat syncing with his own. Halfway down, the rope trembled. A deep vibration rolled through the crater wall. Ethan froze. For a split second, he heard it again, faint, almost human. "Ethan." He swallowed hard. "Jack, I'm here!" The hum deepened. The walls rippled with blue veins of light, spreading outward like neural pathways. And then, impossibly, a section of the crater floor began to open. At its center, surrounded by twisted steel and molten rock, was a shape. Not fully human, not fully machine, but unmistakably alive. Ethan's boots hit the ground with a heavy thud. The air shimmered with static as he stepped closer. "Jack." The figure turned. His brother's face, or what was left of it, flickered into focus. Half of it was still human, eyes tired, gentle. The other half glowed with the same metallic lattice that once powered the stabilizer. "Ethan," Jack said softly, voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere. "You shouldn't have come." Ethan's voice cracked. "I couldn't leave you here." Jack smiled faintly. "You never did know when to quit." The ground trembled again. The walls of the crater began to light up, veins pulsing faster, energy building. Jack winced. "The containment's breaking. I can't hold it much longer." "Then let's get you out," Ethan shouted, grabbing his arm. But his hand passed through a haze of energy. Solid for a moment, then intangible. Jack shook his head. "I'm not in one piece anymore, Ethan. The system needs me to stay." Ethan's breath came shallow. "There has to be another way." Jack stepped closer, his voice calm but resolute. "There is. You go back, you live. You tell them what happened here. What we built. What we broke and what we tried to fix. Jack, please, go," his brother said, placing a hand over Ethan's heart. "Before the next collapse starts." A burst of light enveloped them both. Ethan stumbled backward as the crater began to shake violently. His radio screamed with Rourke's voice. "Cole!" "The ground's moving again. You've got seconds." Ethan looked one last time. Jack stood in the center of the crater, arms outstretched, the veins of blue fire wrapping around him like roots. His voice echoed, steady and final. "Tell them Ridgefield held." Then the world went white. When Ethan woke, he was on the ridge. The crater was sealed, smooth, silent, lifeless. The hum was gone. Karen stood beside him, tears in her eyes. "Is he—" Ethan stared at the horizon where the valley once lay. "He's still holding it." As the sun rose over Ridgefield, the ground was calm, for the first time in decades. But deep beneath the earth, faint and steady, the pulse still beat once every few seconds. Jack Cole was still down there, and Ridgefield would never forget him.